Alright, hey there, welcome back Twin Stick Garage. It's a beautiful morning here in South Georgia, and I'm in a town called Jonesboro, aka Texarkana. And they filmed the majority of the Smokey and the Bandit movie right here in this town, in and around this town, and I aim to find every single spot where the scenes were shot, and there are a lot of them. There's even going to be a few that you probably haven't seen before.
Yeah, oh, that's nice, honey. Okay, ready?
It's amazing that 50 years later, All right, so this first spot here is related to the westbound and down, not to be confused with eastbound and down. So they were still headed west from Atlanta to Texarkana. And when they arrived, they had a sign that said, "Welcome to Texas," which would have been right about there. And then the Bandit Trans Am would have been parked where my rental car is. And then Snowman would have came down this road here and went whipping by, and then Bandit pulled out, spun a bunch of grass behind him, and then took off down that way. Now, the fog's not helping much because you can see the close power lines are exactly the same, but the fog's blocking the larger power line that was in behind. But this was the actual spot where the sign was, and the Bandit was parked. Now, the sharp-eyed viewer will also notice that the 76 Trans Am that was parked there still had the honeycomb wheels on it. The cars were all 76 Trans Ams, but they were trying to make them look like 77s. So in the next scene, you actually see the proper 77 snowflake rim. I guess they forgot to swap them over on that first one. But yeah, this was the exact spot where they pulled into Texarkana. Cool. All right, so now I'm in downtown Jonesboro, I mean Texarkana. And if you recall from the movie where Burt Reynolds came tearing up the street here, that building there, they just put a Texarkana sign on it to try and make it authentic that they're actually in Texas. So this would have been the street that they pulled down, and it's amazing that the buildings are still the same. Some different colors, but you can make out the those windows there. That's a defining feature. And then the Fig Cafe down at the end, and then the very building on the end there, the Arts Clayton Gallery. It's an art gallery, but that was actually the beer store. But that's cool. So 49 years ago, they would have came rolling down this road here, and the 73 Kenworth would have been parked right there. No, actually it was a 74 in front of the beer store. And then the Bandit was parked right behind with the Trans Am there. Now, an interesting little trivia tidbit is that Lynyrd Skynyrd, one of Twin Stick's favorite bands, and does he love the 70s or what? They actually shot their the album cover for their first album right here in Jonesboro, right on the main street here. And I believe it was right in front of that blue building there with the arched windows. And then they were sitting on the street. There's another photo where they were sitting on the street, and I think it was this gray building here with the little outcropping. I gotta check the picture just to be sure. But this is actually where they filmed, or not really filmed, but they took pictures. Try and cross street without getting run over here. But they took the photo art for their very first album. Yeah, so it would have been right here. The band was standing here right beside this arched window. And then that picture they shot would have been right here in front of this building. You can see the arched windows. I don't know what this is now. Oh, it looks like it's for rent. I turned into a record shop. Now, unfortunately, the art gallery's closed, so I can't go in there. But I'll see if I can get a little shot at the inside. So you see underneath that picture with the black, the bricks are a different color. So that would have been the door off to the right.
I thought it was funny.
And then over here, you can see where there was a door that they filled in with different colored bricks. This was all outdoors, so they built all this outside structure. But originally it was back there, and that was the door that Burt Reynolds would have kicked in. And then that opening there to the left of the painting would have been the double doors that Bandit opened up.
Hey, want a beer?
All right, so this next scene is one of my personal favorites. It's the duck, are you gonna be talking out of your ass? So what would have happened here was they would have had the concrete barrier that was pulled out, and you could see, if you look really close, you could see that little turnaround. And the truck was basically right on that turnaround, and the beam would have been sitting right across here. So Buford and Junior would have been traveling along, and that was the funny part, is right before they duck, you could see a whole bunch of trees beside them. So it obviously wasn't shot in this particular spot. But the two stuntmen that were in there, they actually had a special seat. So the driver was able to lean over, but the stunt passenger was able to push a button and his seat flopped back because there wasn't enough room for both of them to get underneath the beam as it sheared the top off. So the one driver leaned over, the passenger leaned back that was playing Junior, and they came through here. Now obviously they had the roof kind of pre-cut because it sheared off so nicely. And then right about here, the roof would have been sitting.
Daddy, the top came off.
And then they would have tore away. Now when they tore away from this spot, they actually spun the tires, and it was still the stunt drivers. It wasn't Buford and Junior. Kind of did a fishtail and then smoked the tires, and then off they went that way. And if you look way off in the distance there, you can still see those buildings. I think it's that red building way up there. Is still the original building that was in the shot right as they pulled away and took off. So that's the only thing that's left 49 years later.
No shit.
All right, so this was a spot where Buford came pulling up. He would have came down the side. They must have had all this brush cleared. Well, actually thinking about it, this was only a 2-lane road. So he would have came pulling along here in what would have been the ditch when his horn was stuck on. So Buford would have came pulling up right about here, and then the officer would have gave a little kick. So the reason I know this is the spot is because you could see the Kawas, that original building from 49 years ago, is still there.
In the United States of America.
This would have been where Buford was getting was hearing all that foul language, and then he just gave that officer a real blast.
Valuable evidence that's going to convict a maniac.
And it's funny because the line there, I did a little research when he goes,
I don't care if your name's Broderick Crawford.
Broderick Crawford was actually an actor that was in a TV show in, I think it was the 50s or 60s called Highway Patrol. That's cool that 49 years later, the Kawas building is still there.
I hope you'll accept my apologies for my profanity.
Apology accepted. No.
All right, so this next spot is one of my favorite Buford moments in the movie, where his horn gets stuck on. So of course, back in 76, this is just a 2-lane road, and now it's a 6-lane freeway. But back when it was just 2 lanes, so the middle lane there would have been where Buford was facing this way, and when he started whacking on his steering wheel there, and then the horn gets stuck on.
What the hell is this, a drive-in movie?
And the reason I know this is a spot is a couple of giveaways. The first up is that Pizza Hut architecture. You can't miss an old Pizza Hut building, which is now, of course, a bail bonds. And then the second is the Flint River Village. If you look over Buford's, I guess it would be his left shoulder, you can see the Flint River Village sign off in the distance. And then the last piece of the puzzle to prove this was the spot is there was originally a KFC behind that. And it's still there today. I mean, that is one hell of a franchise. 49 years later, still going strong. Very cool. All right, this next scene was actually Snowman's house. So when Burt Reynolds was driving the truck, the 74, and they had the tandems pull forward, it was coming down the road here, and you could just see the edge of that brick house in the scene as he's pulling up. And it pulled in around here. Now, unfortunately, the house is long gone, but I'm pretty sure the driveway would have been here, and he pulled up beside this big tree here. Now, this tree has gotten a lot larger in 49 years and a lot deader, which is kind of sad, but I'm pretty sure the house would have been right here. And the reason Hal Needham chose that spot is because, well, before this garden was here, this was just an empty field. So he saw it as a great opportunity to park a bunch of the film crew and a bunch of extra stuff. And there's some great behind the scenes from this angle looking that way. House would have been there, and Hal actually had a different house picked out, but he ended up, he couldn't find the original house he chose here in Jonesboro, so they were driving around and they found this house, and I guess it had an open floor plan.
Damn it, Bandit, look at me!
I find it hard to look at you, Winnette.
And it was just much better for filming. And a little interesting tidbit is the young girl that comes up to Bandit as he pulls the truck in and climbs out.
Hello, Donna.
Hi, Bandit.
Which one of the house apes are you?
Okay.
And her real name is Kay, and she actually lived in that house. And Hal Needham asked her, he goes, "You want to be in the movie?" And she goes, "How much?" So they settled on $200. So Hal paid her $200 to be in that movie and to film that scene with Burt Reynolds. But I'm pretty sure the truck was sitting right in here and then the ramps would have been down, because as Burt and Jerry are talking, if you look over Burt's shoulder, you can see this giant tree in the background.
Mm-hmm. Together again.
Oh, yeah, like Fred and Ginger and Lester and Earl.
So then Burt took off down the ramps and then peeled to the left here on this road. Now, the original house was still there up until a few years ago. They've since bulldozed it and cleared it out and just filled in the basement. I actually don't know. Do Atlanta homes have basements? It might just been a flat bottom. But anyway, the house is long gone, but that's where that was. And you kind of see that in the corner as Burt takes off down that way. Now, interestingly enough, down the road that way, about 1/8 of a mile, is the Jonesboro or the Texarkana building and the beer store, as I just showed you. But this would have been the spot, and there was some neat behind the scenes pictures that I've discovered on the old interwebs there. And there's a couple shots with Alan Gibbs and Janet Brady walking hand in hand. And they actually, both stunt people, and they ended up falling in love. I guess obviously they had a similar interest, and they fell in love and they got married on the set. But I can't remember, it was either Burt Reynolds or Jackie Gleason that gave her away at the wedding. So they actually got married during the filming of that movie. So in a previous Smokey and the Bandit on the Hunt episode, I was actually on the other side of the Flint River, and I found the abutment where they had they built the bridge out with the ramp so they could jump the Trans Am over the Flint River. So this year I'm checking out the other side. Yeah, not much here. So this would have been the landing site where the Trans Am came flying over there and then crashed down in here and just got destroyed. Now it's interesting, it's all dug out here. I wonder if they brought in some softer material for the car to land on. But here's some of the original asphalt that was there. And you can see some of the remnants of the bridge on this side. So again, they would have had the landing pad extended out, and they had that one coming forward. And then this would have been where the car would have landed. But isn't that cool? Should have brought a metal detector with me to see if there's any old Trans Am parts laying around. All right, so this is Mundy's Mill High School, and back when the movie was filmed, this just would have been a field, and right about here would have been the barn that you've seen a couple of times in the scene. So the first one was when Bandit was headed westbound and down, and he was driving through the rain. And if you look real close, they had a bit of a movie mistake there because it had Bandit and Frog. You could see her in the passenger seat, and she hadn't joined them yet. Then the Snowman goes by, and you see this. You see the barn off in the distance here. And then you saw the barn, obviously, in that Roadblock scene. I also was doing a little checking on Google Maps, and from Jonesboro, Georgia to Texarkana, Texas, well, give or take Atlanta to Texarkana, is approximately 1,100 kilometers, which is about, I don't know, 600 and change miles, maybe 640 miles. So Bandit was a little off on his estimate.
It's only 900 miles there and 900 miles back.
And according to Google Maps, it would take 9 hours and 42 minutes one way. So 10 hours one way to get there and 10 hours back. So that gives him about 8 hours to play with. So my buddy Blake mentioned one time, he goes, well, when did the clock start? Did it start when Big and Little Enos Burdette gave him the money? Because he would have had to drive to go buy the Trans Am, get it registered, get Band 1 plates, load it into the trailer, and then head over to Snowman's house. Or did it start when they left Snowman's house? But maybe I'm overthinking it. All right, so do you recognize this location? Isn't that pretty? The original house is still there, and the pond is beautifully upkept. Man, that looks good. So this is obviously the spot where Bandit and Snowman met up. And Snowman got to meet Frog for the first time.
Nice ass.
Thanks a lot.
And fed Fred the cheeseburgers.
Frog, feed Fred. Do you know what the complication?
Obviously, a lot has changed. This was just a 2-lane back road back when this house was new, and now it's a 4-lane freeway, and there's a subdivision across the road there. But it's amazing that the pond looks so good, and they really kept that house up nice. That is a neat piece of history. Yeah, this would have been the exact spot where they were parked, right in here, and then Fred went for a swim. Actually, though, thinking about it, I'm awfully close to the pond. So the original road was probably the far side there, because there seemed to be a bit more space from where the truck was parked to where he went down and chased Fred into the pond. I imagine they just took Fred across to the other side and then got him swimming, and then Jerry Reed went down and picked him up. And there was actually a neat deleted scene that never made it into the movie.
I'm in a hurry and you want to take a bath. Get on up in there. Get on up in there.
Come on back, son. I'm talking to you, son. All right, bring it on. What is it? When you get that damn dog in the truck, you can put the hammer down, because by that time, that Smokey will have gone by you. How do you know that?
All right, so this next scene here is the where they had the County Mountie roadblock. Now, Sheriff George Branford from Decent County, Arkansas, he was actually standing in a different spot down that way. I'll show you that in a bit. But there's Mundy's Mill High School way off in the distance there, like I was showing earlier. And just to the right of that lit up sign would have been where the barn was. They would have turned just before Mundy's Mill Road here. They would have turned into that second entrance of the high school and then went tearing off that way. And then Buford comes all the way up to the officer.
Did you see that? They went right through our roadblock.
And then if you catch it, if you look real close, when Buford's car turns to go down Mundy's Mill Road here, it actually, the rear quarter panel was painted black. So what I'm guessing happened is they filmed that scene where the Buford car tried to go in front of Snowman and got smashed into the quarter panel there. And then they must have just bolted on or welded on a new quarter panel, and they didn't have time to paint it to match.
You some bitches couldn't close an umbrella.
So right where that silver car is, at the front of the line there waiting at the light, that would have been about where Buford would have been talking to that deputy. And then he would have turned left and went tear-assing after Bandit down Mundy's Mill Road. Now Mundy's Mill Road, very interesting road. There was a ton of scenes filmed on this particular stretch of highway. It's only about 2 miles long, and there is a lot. I'm going to show you how many scenes were filmed. So the first up would have been, this is where Frog's car would have died on the right, where that white vehicle is. I'm going to pull over here. So there was a lot of great scenes filmed here. Now they've built a new stretch of highway that kind of goes off to the left. The old highway kind of followed the power line to the right where the grass is there. But so I'll go through the scenes one by one here. So the first one is Bandit would have came tear-assing down here. Right about where my rental is parked is where Carrie's vehicle would have died. And then Bandit would have turned and spun the Trans Am right about there. Now it's interesting, if you actually look way off in the distance there's that black car on the road to the right. When Bandit comes pulling up, there was a blue car that pulled out, and then when he finishes the slide, the blue car is magically gone. And so a little bit of continuity error there. And then also this would have been the spot where Snowman would have followed behind, came around like this, and that van would have pulled out with the 3 boys that were gonna, stay here and watch the car. They pulled out, and then Snowman pulled by. So the van was kind of already over on this side of the road, and Snowman went by on the left. But this is the actual spot. And then Buford would have pulled in, another great scene. Every scene with Jackie Gleason is fantastic. So Buford would have pulled in here.
Hold up on that car wash, gentlemen.
All right, so this spot here would have been where Sheriff George Branford was standing. And the reason I can tell that is because just behind him was a sign that said Willow Bend Homes, Clayton County's finest.
I believe we have the situation well under control, Sheriff.
So this is, obviously I'm standing in Clayton County, and this is Willow Bend right here. This is a dead-end road, and obviously it's blocked by the trees, but this is the Willow Bend homes that were brand new in '76. This was a brand new subdivision, and this would have been right where they were standing doing that particular scene. So the roadblock was actually in 2 spots.
The fact that you are a sheriff is not germane to the situation.
The goddamn Germans got nothing to do with it.
All right, so a ton of scenes were shot on this Mundy's Mill Road, and in addition to the George Branford roadblock, this would be the scene. If you notice the brick posts on the left-hand side, this would have been where Bandit was coming up on Snowman.
Be careful, you're gonna have to make your own lane, buddy, because you definitely got some oncoming traffic.
So the cool thing about this Mundy's Mill Road is it can't be widened. It couldn't be widened because there's homes on both sides, so it never actually turned into there's another Smokey. It never actually turned into a big freeway, so it stayed as the 2 lanes that it was in '76, which is such a treat for a historian like me that's trying to find all these original spots, because if they had widened this out, I wouldn't have a prayer of trying to figure out where this all happened. Okay, I'm coming up on what I think was the spot where Buford got whacked into the ditch here. I'll find a safe place to pull over and see if I can figure it out. All right, so I think I found it. So obviously Jackie Gleason, the stunt man, was following Snowman in the Buford car, and he actually pulls out right about here. Well, he pulled out a little farther back, and then he gets up to just in front of the Snowman truck, and then turns around in front of it, and then the bumper slams into the car. and it was right about here at this this driveway entrance. And the reason I can tell that is because if you pause, I mean, Twin Sticks has watched that movie way too many times. I paused just about every frame in it. But if you look to the left, you could see that original house right there with that cutout was right as it got smacked. So that's where the truck impacted it. Now, I don't know if it spun it into the ditch in that same spot. I have to believe that they actually stopped the scene. There was a picture where it showed the damaged car parked beside Snowman. So then I think they probably found another spot to actually spin it into the ditch.
What we're dealing with here is a complete lack of respect for the law.
I wonder if the owners of these homes even know how famous the end of their driveway actually is. All right, so this one took some effort. Old Twin Sticks was really determined to try and figure out where the mailbox scene was. So I'm actually just down a couple houses from where Buford car got slammed. And I'm pretty sure this is where they did the mailbox scene. Now, the fact that it's a little wider and flatter back there leads me to believe that was allowed the stunt driver, which would have been Alan Gibbs, and with Janet Brady in the shotgun seat, they would have pulled down and pulled along here.
Just a minute here. Let's see. Oh, I got one for you.
What?
I don't know if they flattened this out or maybe it was a different grade back in '76, but I'm pretty sure they pulled out over there. Snowman was coming, they were down in the ditch beside him, and they were headed this way. Now, I think what ended up happening was maybe they didn't flatten out that particular approach, because it looks like they get, when Janet was facing backwards, it looked like she got slammed.
What?
And then, so that would have been that scene. So they would have went there and then they probably stopped. And then I'm guessing that because this is a little steeper of an angle, I'm pretty sure this is where they actually built the jump. So the car would have came zipping along here. They would have probably filled in the ditch here and made the jump from the ditch up to the road. And they would have had all the mailboxes here on the other side of this driveway. So they would have been all boom, 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 boom right there. Now, the only reason I couldn't figure it out from watching the movie, but I found some behind the scenes stills, and that was able to allow me to figure out that this indeed was the spot where the Trans Am hit the mailboxes, because they were all hidden down in here like this. They watched the car jump, and there's 3 pictures where it jumps and hits the mailboxes.
Okay, I'll think one up for you. Just a minute here. Let's see. Oh, I got one for you.
What?
Just give me a minute here. You done good, didn't you, Fred?
Again, if you look close, it's a 76. Well, they're all 76 Trans Ams. But just like the one in the beginning of this this episode here, it had the honeycomb wheels, just like when they were at the Texarkana sign. Now, you're probably saying, well, Mark, that could be any approach. How do you know that that's truly the spot? And the reason I can tell is, again, from those behind the scenes stills, you can see a house in the background, which is that house there. And that roof peak that kind of goes up and down like that. So I'm pretty sure this is the spot. This is the exact spot. Again, I really wonder if this owner knows how famous the front of his driveway is. I mean, probably not. If I owned this house, I would have a plaque. I would build mailboxes and a whole bunch of good stuff. But yeah, that's cool. I'm glad I found this spot. 1067 Mundy's Mill Road. So this would have been Mundy's Mill Pond. And this would have been the place where that cop, when he was chasing Bandit, blew in backwards into the pond. Now, the original Mundy's Mill, you can see it with the big yellow fishing $2 sign on the side of it. It's a dead giveaway, and this was actually kind of a nice staging area that they had set up. Now, unfortunately, the original building is long gone. I mean, 49 years, it probably just would have disintegrated into the ground, but it was still here in the 80s. There's some of the foundation. And some arsonists came and actually burned it out and lit it on fire, which was really unfortunate. But again, there's some of the original foundation. So I'm guessing the building would have been situated here, and then the water wheel would have been in behind in this drop section. Oh, this is so cool. Yeah, so the water wheel was probably somewhere in here, and then the water would come from the dam that they had set up. They would open the weir and let the water flow over the wheel, and it would turn all the machinery inside the building and then grind up the corn. So those are the original rock foundations where they built the Mundy's mill. So cool. Yeah, so there's some more of it here. So this would have been the front of the building. Okay, so maybe this was the front, and then the side was here, and then maybe the water wheel was in that that spot there. I'm not really too sure. I gotta go look back at some of the pictures. But this was definitely the original foundation that they mixed up the concrete and had some homemade rebar to hold it all in place. So yeah, so if this was where Mundy's mill was situated, then based on the behind the scenes pictures I've been able to dig up on the old interwebs, I think, yeah, so there's the edge of the foundation. So the pond must have changed shape over 49 years and got a little wider, because I think this was all a grassy area at one point. Yeah, they must have rebuilt this berm. So I think the pond was a little farther that way, because the mill, there was a road in front of it and then a big grass area. So that was probably all grass at one point. And then I think right off the corner of the mill is where they built the ramp to back that Lamar's into the pond. Man, that is cool. 49 years later. Now, interesting story about that Lamar's. Pontiac only gave a handful of cop cars to Hal to use for shooting. So when they dunked that car in, they actually had to fish it back out, and then they had to get all the seaweed out of there and dry out the electrical. And they used it the next night when they filmed that scene going through that little town with the where Bandit kind of hid behind that little building and then broke the fourth wall and smiled at the camera. So that was the same cop car that was used. Right on. Again, this must have been filled in at one point for the road to kind of come in. Yeah, looks a lot different 49 years later. But this would have been the spot where Hal was sitting there checking out the script and figuring out what he was going to film next. Too cool. Well, wait a minute, what's this? This almost looks like an old structure where the wheel would have been mounted in there. And the water would have dropped down. So I wonder, maybe that was a different building over there? Was the pond set up differently? Because man, oh man, that looks about the right vintage, doesn't it? So was the water wheel here, and then the building was there? And then maybe that would make more sense, because then that's where the road would have been. And then they would have jumped the car into the pond right about here. Yeah, so that must have been another building. Maybe they built their home back in there, but this was the original site of the Mundy's mill. Yeah, this has got to be it, right? This would make a lot more sense. So that would have been their little, they would have had a weir up there, and that would have allowed water to flow over the water wheel, and the water wheel would have been sitting right here. And the water would have came down and spun the wheel and then just went off down that way. It looks like where the original creek was. That would make a lot more sense. Yeah, okay, so if that was the site of the mill, then that road, the paved road, must have been the original road that they were driving down where the cop was chasing Bandit are these kudzu vines, because man, they are brutal to walk through. Ugh. Yeah, I wonder if that was a corner of the building and the wall there. Yeah, like I say, that would make a lot more sense. So this would have been where Mundy's mill was, on this corner here by this post. And then this would have been the nice flat grass area beside the pond. And then they would have come screaming around here, and then obviously they stopped the scene and then built the ramp here and put the car in reverse as fast as they could and launched it into the pond right there. And Hal would have been sitting in his director chair somewhere over here in this area having a picnic with Jerry Reed. So after the fire in '86, this is actually all that's left. Some drums and a little bit of scrap metal there. And then of course the original water wheel. So it survived the fire. And isn't that a neat piece of history? So this was an above water, so it would catch water from the top and then spin it around. Some of them actually had the shovels on the inside, or the buckets on the inside. But yeah, this would have been the original wheel that was used at Mundy's mill. Oh man, that is really cool. I love old history. And there's the high school. They actually named the high school Mundy's Mill High. It's a mouthful. But yeah, they was purchased from the Mundy family in '99. Original site, 204-acre parcel of land connecting Fayetteville and Jonesboro. Yeah, I did a little research on 1890, Reuben's son Andrew Jackson Mundy and his younger son Erasmus E.T. built a grist mill, which originally located in the southwest corner of the farm near the current south entrance, and was powered solely by water. So this was, back then it was only $1. I love the transition with inflation. They had to change the sign probably in the 70s to $2 a day from the original $1 a day. So he must have had the pond stocked. And then, yeah, again, it's burned down in '86. Some arsonists burned it down, so a piece of history is gone. But this would have been where all the local farmers brought their corn to be ground into flour for cornbread and other yummy treats. But so cool to see the water wheel is still intact, and then they made this nice interpretive center of it.